Hi, Stephen. Lovely for you to join us today. I'm going to keep it short. You have a mind-blowing career. Like, you basically got it all. Starting your career in PwC, then Deloitte, then Bain, then Barclays, and then 12 years at LinkedIn, and now the head of UK for enterprise sales. I mean, when I was reading your profile, I was really mind blown. But before we go to the questions, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and share about this incredible journey and all these companies you've worked with?
Yeah, sure. I think, it's interesting you say that because a lot of people will look at the profile and try and understand why all the different movements. But I think there's a rationale to it, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily planned from the beginning. And, as much as we try and plan our careers from a young age, they take twists and turns, and that's exactly what my career took. But I'd say the journey from consulting, and I worked in three different kinds of consulting practices at PwC, Deloitte, and Bain. It was ranging from HR consulting to IT and security and privacy consulting to more generalist management consulting. Those experiences for me were foundational to understanding business across multiple functions. And I think important for me to be able to do what I'm doing today in terms of selling to organizations and help them be successful with the products that we sell. During that time as well, I started to get a better idea of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I'm still trying to answer that question. But like a lot of people, left consulting, spent a couple of years at Barclays Bank in marketing. The intention was to get closer to the business and to really be part of the operations of kind of running a business. Barclays was great. I sat at the group level, and it's a large organization. So I still actually felt a little bit further away from where I wanted to be. And then an opportunity came up with LinkedIn. And when I joined, LinkedIn was a very small organization. We were public, but we were about 1,200 people globally. Now we're probably over 20,000 people. So been part of a journey. I started in our marketing solutions business, which effectively is advertising, and then spent the last 10 years in our sales solutions business, which is a business that helps sales professionals find, relate, and engage with potential prospects. It's one of three business lines at LinkedIn. The other being, again, I said advertising, and then the other one is recruitment and learning solutions. And so it all ties together. Again, consulting was foundational, and really the last 12 years has been my opportunity to be part of the actual running and operating of a business.
Awesome. And tell me a little bit more about your role today. I think there's still like all the functions of LinkedIn between sales and premier can still be so ambiguous that it would be great for our founders to know what is your role with LinkedIn, and as you're being part of the Seedcamp Expert Collective, what they can come to you for.
Sure. So I'll set out LinkedIn overall and how we make money, because I think there's some misunderstandings around how we make money. So we have, I said, three business lines, but we actually have technically four business lines. We have a premium function where individuals can go and buy individual premium licenses, whether that's to find a job, to help them better sell, or just generally have a few more features on LinkedIn. And that business is run by our marketing team. Actually, that is an online-based sales channel. And then we have three enterprise solutions. We have our talent solutions business, which is focused on recruitment and learning and development. We have advertising, and we have sales solutions, the third business, which is where I work. And I lead our enterprise sales team for the UK and Ireland. And I've led that for the last 2 years now. That business is three parts. It's both hunting and farming. So new business acquisition, as well as relationship management. So renewing our existing customers and upselling our existing customers. And we do operate a hunter-farmer model. So account executives will go and find net new business. They close that deal and they hand over to a relationship manager. So I've been in my role for the last 2 and a bit years now. Previous to that, I spent 8 years in our sales strategy and operations team and leading from the early days of actually sales solutions when we were just a handful of people. So a startup under the umbrella of LinkedIn, handful of people globally, really, definitely within EMEA, to a significant business today. We're $1 billion business globally as a sales solutions organization. So been part of hyper growth in the strategy side of things and in the sales side of things. I'd say by most standards, still a high growth business, but on the sales side now, actually selling our product and on the hook for our revenue and our bookings. And so I'd say for, where I can help is I can help across that spectrum from, I wouldn't say necessarily early stage per se. We had a sales team in place and we were part of a large organization, but it was really that scale up stage. We had a product that we were, I think when I joined, still trying to get right with the market. In fact, we didn't have a standalone product at the time that I joined. It was more or less premium features within LinkedIn. And then a couple of years after I joined, we officially launched a product. But from there, it was scaling the business as fast as we could. And from the time I've joined to where we are now, at least in EMEA and LATAM, we were more than 50 times bigger than we were then. So can help there and also help think about what some of the pitfalls are. We're 10 years down the road now. And looking back, there are a lot of things that I would have done differently in terms of setting the foundation. We were so focused on speed that we forgot about the foundations, and that's catching up to us now. And so I can help founders with that as well and help them think through that.
Awesome. Well, actually, as we're on the still LinkedIn topic, I want us to deep dive a little bit more to it. So how can founders and their teams leverage LinkedIn as a more effective sales tool? Any tips on making the best out of all the products, sales, and marketing navigator?
Yeah, so within the sales side, there are actually two different products, and one is relatively new. It's a few years old, but probably less known. But the two products are, one is called Sales Insights, and the second is called Sales Navigator. So Sales Insights is more of a planning tool. It effectively opens up our database, generally for sales operations teams, but also useful for sales managers and reps as well. But what it does is it gives you the macro picture. So for example, it tells you how many people are in your ideal customer profile by country, by industry, or by company. It allows you to see what that opportunity is that you might want to understand so that you can then prioritize your efforts. So for example, the product that we sell is catered for sales professionals. I can see using this tool how many sales professionals there are by country. So how many are there in the UK, in France, in Germany? So I can understand what that addressable market is. And then think about, well, where do I want to start and prioritize my efforts? I can see by industry. So for example, it may be that tech has the largest number of salespeople as an industry vertical, followed by, I don't know, maybe it's financial services or manufacturing. So I may want to start in terms of my focus on tech and telco, and really build my narrative around that. So Sales Insights is a great tool as you're thinking about planning your business for the year, but also thinking about your strategy. How are you going to go to market? Where do you want to focus your efforts? So that's Sales Insights, something that can be very useful, especially I'd say for an early stage company. You can also filter down by companies that are growing or that are shrinking, because you may have a preference for the type of customer that you want to engage with from that standpoint. And then Sales Navigator is the tool that sales users primarily use. And it's a tool that will help them, in short, find the right people to reach out to, and then find the best path in to those people. So if you sell to IT directors, who are all the IT directors in the companies that I want to sell to? And then the ideal scenario is help me understand what that warm path in, or what that introduction path in is to those people, so that I don't have to send a cold email or make a cold call. People are much more likely to respond to a referral than a cold outreach. And I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. I'm sure you get a lot of cold outreach, both on LinkedIn and through email. I'll give a few tips in using Sales Navigator. One is save your accounts down in. So if you're a Sales Navigator user, save accounts, and you will get updates and notifications on those accounts that you're interested in. The second is create and save searches. So for example, if you are, again, interested in selling to IT directors, you set up a search. The first time you set that search up, you'll see all the different IT directors within whatever country, whatever your search filters are, say in the UK. But every time somebody new enters that search, you'll get a notification. So you don't have to rerun that search. You can get a notification to say, hey, so-and-so joined this company as an IT director. And that's invaluable in terms of being able to get that notification, because it gives you an opportunity to see something that you wouldn't have otherwise known, but then also gives you almost a trigger to then go reach out to that person. And then the third is leverage the relationship map. It's a relatively new feature within Sales Navigator. The relationship map is, you can almost org chart the buying committee and all the influencers within a purchasing cycle, and you can share that with others within your team. And as a scale up, as a startup, your sales team might be small, but you can also share it with the rest of your organization, because you never know who knows who within these organizations. And again, the power of warm introductions is invaluable.
Definitely the power of warm intros is really invaluable. Well,
that's how you and I met, actually.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, I actually want to take us to a little bit more broader section of questions and the whole go-to-market strategy. What your tips would be for founders and for sales leaders to actually nail that sales strategy part of go-to-market?
I'd say for sales strategy, I'll say that let me break it into three different buckets. So the first, I'll say sales process, the second, sales targets, and the third, sales tactics. And I'm sure there are other things that people will define or put within sales strategy. At a high level, I'd say keep it simple. Keep it simple. I think there are so many frameworks that you can use, and there's so many white papers you can read with robust methodologies and processes, but keep it simple, because the more complicated you make it, the harder it is going to be to follow and to implement. But for process, I'll say it should be a common language. It should be a common language for how you discuss deals with your sales team. So if you're talking about sales stages, are you in the introduction phase? Are you in the identifying the requirements phase? Are you in the validation phase? Are you in the negotiation phase? Make sure that it's documented, but that it is part of your regular dialogue. And so that you can then understand for every deal where you are, and that everybody else can understand where you are as well. So document it, make it a common language, not just on paper, but part of every deal review, part of every one-to-one, every forecast call. Make sure you're always using that language. Or if you use a sales methodology, let's say you use MEDDPICC, which is in many ways pretty straightforward. You might be talking about the economic buyer, but you don't know that economic buyer. You need help establishing that relationship. Just make sure that you're having that. If MEDDPICC is your sales methodology, that you're using that as a basis for conversation in every one-to-one that you're having or deal review that you're doing. And it's important, because if you don't get things like this right early on, it is much harder to change and implement as you get larger as an organization, because you start to develop habits. Sales teams start to develop habits that become hard to break. So keep it simple, make it part of your daily dialogue, document it. So sales process. The second is around sales targets. And I'd say look at both inputs and outputs. I think it's very simple or very easy to think about the outputs. Output, a very simple measure, is quota, achieve a certain amount of revenue or bookings by a certain date. But there can be other outputs as well beyond that. And it could be things like customer activation. Make sure that X number of licenses that you've sold have been activated by a certain date, or make sure that usage is at a certain level, because those are all metrics that will also drive future value for an organization. But again, coming back to keep it simple. You don't want to layer on too many metrics such that it gets so confusing. You don't know where people need to be focusing their efforts and their time. But there are more than just revenue and bookings metrics. The second, I think, that often gets forgotten are the inputs. The inputs are important as well. Inputs could be number of meetings. It could be the number of opportunities you're creating. These are important, because this is, without that rhythm and without that cadence, you're not going to be as successful getting to your outputs. And again, we've later on within the evolution of our business tried to get more strict with that. And it was really difficult. So get these implemented very early, focusing on both the inputs and the outputs. And if you do focus on the inputs, what you may learn is that actually you've got the perfect sales process. You've got the perfect cadence. Your sales teams are doing all the things that they should be doing. It's not about talent. It's not about process. And so then it allows you to then see, well, if all of that is right, well, maybe there's something that's not right with the product. Maybe that product market fit isn't quite right. And so if you're focusing on the inputs as well as the outputs, and you think you're doing everything right, well, then it allows you to look at in other areas where things may not be working out quite as well if things aren't going very well.
I also wanted to bring us back a little bit to ideal customer profile. You touched upon it earlier, but I want us to discuss a little bit more how you see it as the foundation of the go-to-market strategy, but also how sales and marketing teams, as you've been in both sales and marketing role,
Yeah.
can actually work together and identify like the ideal customer profile.
Yeah, I think it's important because it allows you to focus on the customers who are going to find the most value in your product and then therefore obviously bring value back to you. It also allows you to be very, very focused as an organization. So, for example, if part of your ideal customer profile is an industry metric, well, the way you talk to financial services or a bank is very different than the way you talk to a software company. And so the better you can identify these profiles, the better you can be aligned as an organization, and the more effective you can be in the way you communicate out to the market. And so that's where the value is. It's around the focus, it's around the alignment, it's around talking the customer's language in a way that they understand you and in a way that you can be very credible. I think in terms of the way you work with marketing, I guess maybe a simple way to think about it is I'd say sales identified, people may debate this, sales identified and marketing refined. And what I mean by that is it actually may take a little bit of time, especially as a startup, early stage, to understand that. And you may just need to go out and try selling, in the absence of having an ICP. But through that process, you'll learn. As a salesperson, you'll learn about who is responding well to whatever you're selling, who's not responding well. And based on that information, you can feed that back to marketing to then go out and have some deeper dive interviews to learn a little bit more around why it might be working well in one industry or a size of company than another, and then have them work on and refine together with sales a narrative.
And obviously, this is great and easier when you're in a big organization, but I wanted to hear what your tips will be for early stage startups to generate and validate and qualify those leads with limited resources.
I'd say, in some ways, actually validating and qualifying leads, it shouldn't be different, right, in an early stage startup versus a more established company, in that regardless, you want to be as efficient as you can be with your time as a salesperson. You don't want to be wasting your time. And I'd say, depending on the organization, if you have a marketing team, even if you are a startup, if you have a marketing team, the marketing team can help with inbound leads and creating a filter around at top of funnel, qualifying out leads before they even get to sales teams. So that's one filter. If you don't, you might want to use something very simple, like as a salesperson, BANT. Is there budget, authority, need, timing? That's maybe a simple process that you can go through. And if that's not there, just know that it's time to move on, maybe to the next customer. I would say that one thing to be wary of is qualifying out too fast. And so depending on the organization or the potential customer that you're talking to, you may have one conversation, and that conversation, whatever process you use, let's say it's BANT, may say, actually, not the right time for them. They don't have the budget. I'm going to move on to the next customer. But actually, some organizations are large, and it just may be that person that you spoke to wasn't the right person. And so I would encourage people to take a couple goes with different people, multi-thread throughout the organization. There might be, if you're talking to enterprise customers, there are going to be multiple teams within that business where one team may not be ready, but another team or manager or buyer may be ready. So have a few conversations because the customer may fit maybe your perfect customer profile. And it just so happens that one customer, it wasn't the best conversation. Go find somebody else. Have maybe one other conversation to then validate that initial conversation. You may be surprised that actually some people are a lot more receptive to a conversation than others within the same organization.
Yeah, and I guess it goes down to don't waste your time and move on quicker.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, great. Stephen, these were all the questions that we had for you today. But if there are any last words, tips, or anything you want to share with our early stage founders, please.
Yeah, I would say there are a lot of things you can do. And I always come back to simplicity, but I'll add to that simplicity, consistency, accountability, and measurement. The more complicated you make things, the harder it is to follow, the harder it is to gain traction, the harder it is to implement. So that's the simplicity end of things. Consistency, the more regular whatever you implement is part of your dialogue, the more traction you're going to get. Measurements important, no matter what you implement in terms of targets, inputs or outputs, or in terms of strategies. If you're not measuring, then it doesn't matter. You're not going to know when things are going well or not going well. You're not going to know where to look to understand why things are going well or not well, and where you may want to then adjust your strategy. So, for example, like an input measure might be you need to create X number of opportunities in a given week or in a given month. If you don't have that, you don't know whether or not it's like, do you need to dial up that activity, or do you need to dial it down and focus on other things? Measurement's going to be highly important. And then accountability. Accountability is actually pretty hard. I think people underestimate how hard it is to hold people accountable to hitting targets or certain metrics, and making sure that you're holding people accountable to whatever process you implement. If it's sales stages, make sure that people are inputting sales stages as part of their process. If it's MedPick that you're using, make sure that people are following that. If it's activities, make sure people are logging that. And that's going to help you then drive success into the future. But get it done early as well. I think, you might feel that as a startup, that process is not important, that speed is very important, and speed is important. But sometimes you need that process to enable you to go faster, because if you don't have that, it can get a little bit chaotic. And if you wait too long, it can get a lot, you can end up spending a lot of time trying to implement something when you get a little bit bigger, because you've built in habits that people aren't used to.
Wow, there's a lot of food for thought. Like, I think definitely what I want to remember from you is holding people accountable to the processes that you've said. I think it's so easy for people to fall back into the ways that they're used to. Then actually, that process will help you accomplish things and get things done faster. Thank you, Stephen. This was incredibly insightful. Thank you so much. And to everyone who is watching, you can reach out to Stephen through the Seedcamp Expert Collective and have some one-on-one time with him.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.